Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Jamaica receives improved press freedom ranking. MAJ reiterates call for updated defamation legislation. And later in sports, 3 Jamaicans included in West Indies' T20 World Cup squad. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Masters and here are the details. Jamaica has moved up 8 places in the 2024 World Press Freedom Index. The country now ranks 24th out of 180 countries with a score of 77.3. This compares with the 75.89 it received last year. Trinidad and Tobago was ranked 25th. Norway, Denmark and Sweden round out the top 3 countries with a free press. Now, the index compiled by the global media watchdog Reporters Without Borders was released earlier today. The group says Jamaica ranks among the countries that most respect freedom of information. Meanwhile, the government has welcomed the country's advancement in the Global Press Freedom Rankings. Minister without portfolio with responsibility for information, Robert Morgan, says the move is significant as it now places Jamaica as the top country in the Caribbean as it relates to press freedom.
The government of Jamaica has done a lot of work as it relates to encouraging press freedom and creating an environment of accessibility for media workers in Jamaica. Our reinvigorated post-cabinet press briefing creates a safe environment where media personnel can ask any question to any minister and answers are given. We find the ranking to be a testament to Jamaica's continued work in improving the conditions, the safety, and the freedom of journalists to do their work.
Now, Communications Manager at the National Works Agency, NWA, Stephen Shaw, says a decision has been taken to discontinue its engagement with local contractors on the Southern Coastal Highway Improvement Project in St. Thomas. It comes amid challenges with local contractors. He says trenches 5 and 6, which run from Prospect to Arcadia and Arcadia to Amity Hall, will be completed by another contractor.
Themselves. These packages are not being done through subcontracting, as the government has taken the decision to go this route, given the challenges that we have had with the other 10 packages under the tranches 1 and 2 of the S-chip, where work is actually still ongoing.
Says the roadway, which will cost over $15 billion under the new arrangement, should eliminate some of the issues faced on previous sections.
We have taken on board the concerns. The consultants are going to be looking back at the plans, the designs for some of these areas, and we will certainly be giving to the residents no less of a corridor than that which they know are able to enjoy. We see where erosion is taking place in some areas. We know where they have concerns about flooding in some other areas. We are going to be constructing new and improved drainage features, and many of these have already been put in place.
The police in Portland are now at the scene of a suspected murder at the Innis Bay Beach, where the body of an unidentified man was found. It had several chopped wounds to the face. Residents are alleging that the wounds were inflicted last night. Reports are that the man was at a bar in the community when a heated argument ensued between him and another man. The other man allegedly stabbed the victim multiple times. The victim then left the bar and headed to a house he owned nearby the beach. Residents discovered his body sometime this morning. This brings to 3 the number of murders in the parish since the start of the year. Head of the Area 3 Police, Assistant Commissioner of Police ACP Calvin Allen, is insisting the Jamaica Constabulary Force is taking steps to ensure the physical and mental well-being of its members. TVJ News caught up with him at this week's resumption of the JCF's Area 3 Sports Day in Manchester, which he notes is just one tool being used to help police cope with their stressful job.
We have set up at different areas across the organization, at the stations, equipment that our members use to ensure that they stay fit.
He explained that the event was just as important for serving members of the JCF as it is for injured ex-police who do not usually get the opportunity to go out and enjoy themselves.
JCF members that are here from the convalescent home out in St. Elizabeth, they have been injured in different forms of collisions, and so we decided to invite the medical team along with those members out. They are physically challenged in many ways, but just by looking at their faces, I'm seeing that they are really delighted to be here and to sharing in the day's activities.
It's an awesome feeling, because a long time I don't really sit down and watch something like this. I don't see these things very regular. So when I see it now, I get excited because I love sports. And even though cricket is my favorite sports, I love track and field.
Regional Director of the Southern Regional Health Authority, Michael Bent, is encouraging other employers to engage their workers in similar events in support of the Health Ministry's ongoing drive to promote health and wellness among Jamaicans. Now back to a story regarding the Press Freedom Rankings. The Media Association of Jamaica, MAJ, says despite the improvement, there is still much work to be done to remove the impediments to freedom of the press. Kirk Wright reports.
As the globe celebrates World Press Freedom Day, the Jamaican government is being called on to address a number of issues locally for media entities and journalists, especially to have the freedom to carry out their duties. In a press release Friday morning, the Media Association of Jamaica reiterated its call for the outdated defamation legislation to be looked at. It says, under the current legislation, the burden of proof still rests with media houses, potentially exposing valuable sources who allow journalists to bring transparency to issues of public interest. It also noted that journalists continue to see efforts to obscure or suppress information of public interest harmful to either side. The leadership of the Media Association has also called for the government to do something about individuals who record and share media entities' material on social media for monetary gain. It pointed to the increasing influence of external social media platforms extracting advertising spend to foreign jurisdictions without paying taxes to the government and without direct compensation to the local media houses for content they are monetizing. It also wants better monitoring for the use of artificial intelligence in the local space. And though the government has passed and implemented the data protection legislation, the association notes there are elements which will make the work of journalists more difficult. The MAJ also notes that the new broadcast content code being introduced seemingly expands the jurisdiction of the broadcast regulator to platforms for which they have no authority to regulate. It says these issues need to be addressed in a bid for Jamaica to remain in the top ranks of press freedom. Kirk Wright, TVJ News.
Classes at the Exchange All-Age School in St. Anne had to be suspended following a freak storm earlier this week. It's understood that during a heavy downpour on Wednesday, strong winds damaged power lines and blew off the roof of a building on the Grade 2 block. It served as a resource center and storeroom. The contents of the building remain exposed to the elements. Principal of Exchange All-Age, Ricardo Moncrief, says a preliminary assessment of the damage has been done.
Since then, the electrician and the carpenter came in, did their assessment, so we are awaiting a fulsome estimate of the damages. Cleaning up activities continues today, and we are waiting to do some initial repairs to the building to ensure that we return to some level of normalcy by Monday.
Mr. Moncrief says a team from the Jamaica Public Service is to return to the school to replace the power lines.
We are still awaiting them to arrive. They did come on Wednesday, but thought more or less that the damages that we had experienced was more to the school, but then the power line that came from the JPS source, that was severely burnt. So we have made call to them to come and disconnect so that we can do the repairs on the building and have them reconnecting their services.
It is hoped that electricity will be restored by next Monday. And it's time for a break here on the Midday News, but stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. A public health officer in St. Catherine is raising concern about the water quality and safety at some sources in the parish. At the latest Infrastructure Committee meeting of the St. Catherine Municipal Corporation, Water Quality Officer at the Public Health Department, Claudette McNee-Simmons, explained her concerns about activities at the Seafield and Macatree catchments in rural parts of the parish.
I've been speaking about Macatree for the last months. Now it seems as if because of the overgrown vegetation, persons choose to tie the animals there. I was there up as recent as Monday, and there are so many donkeys, feces of every different animal on the compound. That is a no-no, because this is a catchment tank we're talking about.
Meanwhile, she's also concerned about water sources with no assigned operators to adequately distribute potable water to residents. She made specific mention of the Gibraltar Spring in Bongwalk.
There's no operator, and this is a spring that has water all the time, so persons are collecting water there. I'm not getting a chlorine residual reading because there's no one there to treat the water. So persons are collecting water that is not safe.
Mrs. McNee-Simmons said she brought the matter to the attention of her superiors last year, but there has been no change. And it's now time for the Business Minute. Supreme Ventures says its financial technology fintech operations have been doing well in the remittance business. Executive Chairman Gary Peart says there are plans for expansion in the coming months.
First phase is you have a limited rollout. We have 6 locations. It's going pretty well. And so we're going to be assessed by the central bank. Once they confirm that we're running the business in accordance with the details of the license, then we get to the second and final phase where we can now take on third-party locations and additional locations to expand our footprint. So we expect that to go pretty well because we think there are synergies with our target market and the remittance market. And certainly in this initial first phase, we're seeing that our revenues from just the 6 stores that we have is ahead of the budget that we have put in place.
He says this avenue will be an added stream of foreign currency earnings. Mr. Peart was addressing this week's Mayberry Investor Forum. Sales of iPhones have fallen in almost every market across the globe, according to the latest results from Apple. The technology giant said overall demand for its smartphones dropped by more than 10% in the first 3 months of this year, with sales falling in every geographic region except for Europe. Apple said that overall revenues across the company declined by 4% to $90.8 billion, which was the biggest drop for more than a year. And that's it for the Business Minute. Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, Guyana President Dr. Irfan Ali is defending his government's policies to aid the working class. Dr. Ali says the government had created more than 50,000 new jobs since August 2020. This had been a manifesto promise of the governing party from that year. But there hasn't been any known compilation of the number of jobs created, the sectors in which they are located, or any independent review of these figures. The Guyana president's statement comes in the aftermath of criticism over the government's handling of wage talks with teachers, which resulted in a 4-week strike. The government had refused to hold collective bargaining talks with the teachers' union. On the international scene, political attacks on journalists are increasing across the globe, according to the annual World Press Freedom Index. These attacks include the detention of journalists, the spreading of misinformation, and a suppression of independent voices. The organization says with more than half of the world's population going to the polls in 2024, governments are failing to protect journalism. The report comes as the BBC warned that over 300 of its journalists were now working in exile from their home countries amid increasing attacks on their reporting. At least 100 journalists have been killed in Gaza between October 7 of last year and May 1, 2024. And Russian troops have been deployed to an air base in Niger where American soldiers are located. The move comes after Niger's military rulers ordered the U.S. to withdraw troops who had been countering Islamic insurgents in the region. Russian forces were present at the base in Niger's capital, Niamey, but were not mingling with American troops. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said the Russians posed no risk to U.S. forces. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Amoy Harriet.
And we head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your midday sports report.